Welcome to the Rotary Club of Seattle. We are one of 46,000 Rotary clubs as part of Rotary International, the largest service organization in the world. Woo! I'm Nancy Cahill, the current president of Seattle Rotary. We're grateful to have Brad Barber serve today as our meeting reporter, which allows us to have a newsletter update on these meetings. And we're joined by many others on Zoom live with a feed today for this meeting. So we like to begin our meetings with a song, and today we have Jimmy Collins directing us, and Freeman Fong will accompany on the piano. Jimmy?
Thanks very much, President Nancy. When I'm introduced as I'm going to direct you, earlier in my life that would have had a different meaning. I think at this point I'd like for you to join me in making a joyful noise. How's that? I appreciate Freeman Fong, our accompanist, and we do this together often and enjoy it. The song we're going to sing today is Over the Rainbow, and it's one that I sort of fell in love with during our time in Hawaii. We love to spend time in Hawaii. One of the people who made this song popular was Israel, or is, as he was known. He's passed on now, but fortunately we have lots of his recordings to listen to, and I hope you'll sing this in that spirit that is with his uke would bring us. So, Maestro. There's a land that I heard of once in an alibi, somewhere over the rainbow skies, and the dreams that you dare to dream. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Jimmy and Freeman. Please be seated. We'll now have Nick Anderson from our Inspiration Committee will provide an inspiration, followed by Faith Ireland and Joe Phillips introducing us to two new members. Nick?
You all sang it so beautifully. Probably the best. Well done, well done. So I just moved. Our family moved into a new home about 10 days ago, and we didn't have internet like 2 days in. And this is a problem. 4 teenagers, 13, 15, 17. If there's no Instagram, the world isn't. And so I'm on tech support. I'm on my hands and knees. I'm there looking at the router. The lights are not on. It's not working. I need the internet. So okay, can you check are all the cables connected to the? Yeah, they're connected. I know what I'm doing. The cables are connected. The lights. Is there an on switch? Like what's going on with Xfinity? You guys are broken. Sir, there's a cable in the back. It's black. They're all black. I know. Can you just follow that cable? And at the end of it, there should be 2 prongs sticking out of it. Yeah, I found a cable. I can see the prongs. Sir, we're going to need you to take that modem and put it in a box and ship it back to us. I said, yeah, I know it's broken, right? No, sir, that's the power cord. It wasn't plugged in. You need to send that back. Why do I have to send it back? Well, sir, you are clearly not capable of having access to the internet. So I think of this, and I think of the need actually to unplug every now and again, to clear the cache, to get the stuff out of our memory that junks us up and slows us down and distracts us from life. And what a blessing it was for 3.5 hours to not have the internet in the moment, to talk to my children and for them to talk to me and learn everything that I had to teach them, which was not how to plug in the modem. So the inspiration for today is, if you can, find an opportunity to unplug, even if it's just for a minute. Good day.
Good afternoon. I'm Faith Ireland, and it's my pleasure today to introduce Amy Moore. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah, there we go. The first picture is a picture of Amy when she was growing up. She grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, playing softball, water skiing, and painting. She called herself a tomboy. They gave her confidence when she went to live with her grandparents, who lived in Kansas City. The confidence they gave her was to attend college. And after she was divorced, she was a single mother, and she attended the University. Oops. I seem to have lost myself here. Okay, I guess we're not going to see the pictures of the kids.
Yeah, oh, that's okay. Well, that's them grown.
But we had a cute picture of her, her two children that she was taking care of while she was at the same time going to the University of Missouri, Kansas City Law School. She graduated with honors, all the while working and taking care of her children, including working for the first African-American mayor of Kansas City. She also clerked for the first African-American federal district court judge in that area. She then joined a large national firm in employment and education law. She has been a frequent speaker on those subjects. She married her best pal, Matt O'Laughlin, also a lawyer, in 2003. And they had met in college, where they both, as undergraduate, loved to debate. In 2016, they started their own firm. After getting their kids finished with college, they moved to Seattle. And in the other photo, you see a picture here of her son, Dylan, who is a musician in Nashville to the left, and then her daughter, Kathleen, who works at Vanity Fair and Vogue in New York City and does amazing event preparation. In Seattle, their law firm, Maloney O'Laughlin, fights all forms of discrimination in employment, also sexual harassment, also immigration issues. They love Seattle for the weather, the hiking and the skiing, walking, and still debating. They are about to be grandparents, as their son Dylan and his wife Haley are going to have a daughter any day now. So thank you for joining us, Amy. We love having you here.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to follow with our second new member, my Seattle University colleague, Julie Kang. Julie is Director of Professional and Continuing Education at Seattle U, and she has nearly 30 years of experience in education. She's always been passionate about providing educational opportunities to non-traditional students and emphasizing the importance of culturally sustaining pedagogy in educational programs. Julie was born in Korea, but at the age of 6, moved to the U.S. and grew up in West Los Angeles. She attended UCLA, where she earned a degree in fine arts, and it was during her time as a student there that she developed her passion for teaching students when she got to serve as a teaching volunteer. After graduation, she began teaching in the LA School District, and within a few years started going to school in the evenings to get her master's degree in administration and gifted education at Cal State LA. She was looking for ways to have more impact on teaching of multilingual students beyond the students in her classroom. Julie was one of the first teachers in the nation to earn national board certification. And because of that, the University of Washington asked her to come help them stand up a national board certification program. So she moved to Seattle to join the UW. Once here, she was encouraged by the university to join its PhD program in curriculum and instruction, which she did while continuing teaching and administration work in the Highline and Shoreline districts. In 2014, she became Director of Professional Learning for UW's College of Education. And then in 2017, she came to Seattle University to be Director of Professional and Continuing Education in our College of Education, and is now moving to do that same work at the university level. Julie and her husband, Tony, have a daughter, Kathleen, who is starting this fall as a freshman at USC. She enjoys walking and hiking, yoga, and is an avid reader, including being in a book club with her fellow UW PhD students for the last 15 years. So please join me in welcoming the newest member, Julie Kang.
Faith and Joe, thank you so much for your tremendous introduction to our newest members. And Amy and Julie, we're so glad to have you in our midst. We gave each of you a pin, and that Rotary pin represents your connection to 1.4 million Rotarians throughout the world. So wear it with pride, and we look forward to getting to know you and to serving beside you. So we have several guests with us today, so this is our chance to welcome the guests. And I'll have, as I announce the names of the guests, I would love you to stand, and then we'll greet all of you at the conclusion of that. We have our keynote speaker, Ashlie Bryant, here, and Tracy Fitzia is a guest of Ashlie. We have Tiffany Gorton. She is an attorney at KHBB Law and is a guest of Cindy Sherrick. We have coming the longest distance, Girish Travada is a member of the Rotary Club of Mumbai, okay, India, yes. We're so glad to have him. Thank you for coming this distance. We have Maria Langworthy. She's a guest of Julie Kang, so our new member has a fan here, which is awesome. And then we have two people from Shoreline Rotary, Dave Walker and his wife, Carolyn Walker. And we have from the Norman Sooner Rotary Club in Norman, Oklahoma, we have J.T. Johnson. And we have, yes, those Sooners get some cheer.
That's the actual name. I didn't just put that down.
No, that's great. And then Isabel Shane is also a guest of here. We have a group from the Pacific Northwest Ending Sex Trafficking Club, and we have in that group Alicia Hoskins. We have Julie McNamara Dahl, Kelly Mangliaracina, Maureen O'Shaughnessy, Susanna Southworth, and Chris Ilgen Fritz. And can we have a warm Rotary, any other guests that I haven't mentioned? Sorry, any random people that snuck by us? Well, we have some guests online that you're missing out being here in this room. So I would love to have a warm Rotary welcome for all our guests. And now we have our own Virginia McKenzie to introduce a short program, followed by introducing our keynote speaker.
Thank you, President Nancy. It is such a joy to be here today at this moment, and thank you for all of you who are Zooming in from the Rotary Action Group Against Slavery and other Rotary clubs across the country. Thank you. So, can you believe it? 2 years ago, on September 29th, with Seattle 4 Rotary as our official sponsor, we launched an innovative single cause club, the Rotary Club of the Pacific Northwest, Ending Sex Trafficking. And I got to be the charter president. To give you an idea of the types of projects that we have been up to the last 2 years, here is a highlight reel. We did a backpack build party for homeless youth in Seattle. We affixed stickers to hotel soaps with the National Trafficking Hotline. Next slide, please. Yes. And they were delivered to hotels near the Super Bowl in Phoenix. We have done litter picks with We Heart Seattle. We have planted flowers and did yard work at Rest House North. This is a long-term housing for survivors of trafficking. This was a very successful service project. We had 20 volunteers from 6 different Rotary clubs. We cleaned the van for Rest's outreach on North Aurora. So Rest goes out to North Aurora, does direct outreach, and we went and cleaned the van. We have assembled comfort kits for Rest. So these are used to open up a conversation with somebody and offer them pathways to hope out of the life. And we assembled and baked cookie gift bags during the holidays for Organization for Prostitution Survivors, and many more. This is just a highlight. So, by the way, you and every other Rotary Club in our district are welcome to participate in our service projects. I will be sure to invite you. And speaking of opportunities to get to hang out with us, we are having our anniversary party this Saturday. The Rotary Rogues will be performing, and you will get a continued live Q&A with our guest speaker today, Ashlie Bryant. The RSVP link is in our newsletter. Look for it last week because RSVP is closed tonight at 7 o'clock. I have to know how much food to buy. I need a little bit of planning time. Please RSVP by 7. Okay, thank you. So, every Rotarian can play a powerful role in the fight against trafficking. You can put up my first slide, just the Rotary Club against the first one. Specifically, I am referring to prevention, starting with meaningful conversations in our own families and young people we care about. I know this is hard, and if you don't know where to start that conversation, I'm gonna give you a word track right now. Imagine for a moment that I am speaking directly to a 13-year-old, maybe a child, maybe a niece or nephew. It starts like this. Oh, I'm gonna be moved to tears, sorry. The world is mostly a good place, but not always. In your life, you will encounter people who want to harm you. I want to talk to you about the very real, serious topic of sex trafficking and grooming, so that if you ever see signs of it, you will recognize it quickly and steer clear. Trafficking is when youth are sold for sex, or really anybody is forced into prostitution. And I know what you're thinking. This would never happen to you in our community, and I hope that is true too. But just in case we are not so fortunate, please let me tell you a little more. Sex trafficking sometimes starts with kidnapping, but really that is pretty rare. The more likely scenario is that an older adult grooms a youth into a trusting relationship before the abuse begins. Here are the scenarios I want you to look out for. Adults who want to have a secret relationship with you. Adults who shower you with expensive gifts or free drugs. Adults who promise you opportunities that are just too good to be true, like a path to be a movie star, a fashion model, or a recording artist. Adults who find ways to get physical with you in ways that cross your personal boundaries, like tickling, play fighting, or massage. Adults who want to look at explicit pictures or videos with you. If anybody asks you to do something that you feel uncomfortable with, I want you to come talk to me about it. And I promise I will be helpful. I will always help you. And for goodness sakes, do not share and exchange nude selfies. Nothing good can come of this. And if the photos get in the wrong hands, people may use them to try to manipulate you or bully you. If you do share nude selfies, please come tell me about it. Again, I promise I will find a way to help. I don't want you to ever feel like you are trapped. I care about you. Okay, that's pretty short and sweet, but even that much could help a kid and their friends. Thank you. So, one of the most powerful safeguards to protect youth against sexual exploitation is letting them know that they are surrounded by caring adults. On this topic, I am overmoon excited to introduce to you Ashlie Bryant, CEO of 3Strands Global Foundation. She is a board director for the Rotary Action Group Against Slavery, which is a coalition of 800 Rotarians from clubs all around the world united to fight sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Ashlie is going to share with us details of a curriculum for youth and adults to help protect youth from sexual exploitation. Rotary Club of the Pacific Northwest is very pleased to endorse this program. We evaluated multiple curriculum based on the following criteria: cost per student, depth of learning, production quality. Is it survivor informed? Is it trauma informed? Ongoing sustainability, history of success, and overall scalability. Based on all of these factors, we are proud to endorse 3Strands Global Protect curriculum. To date, this program has trained over 115,000 adults and more than 800,000 youth. Just this year, and the timing could not be more perfect, you guys, just this year, Washington State Legislature passed Senate Bill 5355, mandating instruction on sex trafficking prevention and identification for students in grades 7 through 12. This is a wonderful development. At the end of this program today, I hope you will be moved to share the YouTube recording of this program with all of your friends who are parents of teenagers and also educators, school board directors, and school administrators who will be looking for curriculum like this. Without further ado, let me proudly introduce Ashlie Bryant from 3Strands Global Foundation. Thank you.
Wow, what an honor it is to be here today. Virginia, while you were reading that, I was teary too. So thank you so much for being so passionate, for really desiring to eradicate human trafficking. It's such an important story that we all need to be a part of. I always start with my why. Being the CEO and co-founder of 3Strands Global Foundation for the last almost 14 years has been a true honor of mine. But I share my why because this is not something that I chose lightly to do. I had a career in marketing communications for high-tech companies in Silicon Valley. But in 2008, my good friend's daughter, at 17 years old, was hanging out with a bunch of other high school kids. And while they were socializing, a trafficker, 22-year-old, befriended them. But they didn't know that it was a trafficker. And he dove deep into questions and asked a lot of personal things, but tried to figure out who was most vulnerable in the crowd. And unfortunately, my friend's daughter, who was 17, he picked as the most vulnerable. So he offered to take a whole slew of the high schoolers home in his Hummer, and he took the kids home one by one by one. When my friend's daughter was the only one left in the car, she said, "Hey, you just passed my house." And he had put drugs in her soda when she wasn't looking in that social scene in the parking lot where they were socializing. So she started to feel a bit woozy, and he said, "No, I have other plans for you." And he threatened her in the car, and then he drove her back to his family's house where he was living at the time. He raped her there, and then he posted her for sale on Craigslist, where he sold her to a violent trafficker in the Bay Area, where she was repeatedly sold 15 to 20 times a day before she was recovered by law enforcement in our county as well as the federal officers. She was brought home, and one of the things the FBI said to my dear friend was, "Have you heard of the term human trafficking?" And she said no, and they started to unpack it. And as they unpacked this story about what human trafficking really was, she dropped to her knees, and all of us who had been in the community with missing posters and putting things up to find her daughter, all of a sudden understood at a level that we never expected in this sleepy suburb of Sacramento what human trafficking really was. So we started 3Strands Global Foundation after the trial was completed. The trafficker was sentenced to 12 and a half years in federal prison, and he served 10 of those years and was released in 2019. But I'm here today to share a little bit about one of the areas, which is prevention education. I think actually if you'll move the slide forward. That story for us at 3Strands Global Foundation is really foundational to everything that we do. We have the privilege and the honor of focusing in on 3 different areas that I'll talk about today, but everything we do at 3Strands is around preventing human trafficking. Next slide, Ryan. So our vision is a world free from human trafficking, and go ahead, go forward. And our mission is really to mobilize communities to combat trafficking through prevention education and reintegration programs. And as I talk about our programs, specifically prevention education for you all, I would be remiss, Ryan, if you can go forward again, please, to not talk about just the suite of programs that we offer just a little bit so you understand what Virginia talked about, the importance of being trauma-informed, the importance of having survivor voice and lived experience experts in everything we do. The importance of research that we've always, since day one in 2010 when we became a nonprofit, had as the foundation of how not only we learn, but how we adjust, how we adapt, and how we make sure we're making the impact that we need to. So not only do we have K-12 education, which I'll go through because that bill became law here in Washington, but we also have education for law enforcement, for government services, for social services, for parents and communities and caregivers, and we also have it for our juvenile justice system. Next slide, Ryan. The other piece that's really important as we talk about how we're going to prevent human trafficking, for us, prevention is not only primary and secondary and tertiary prevention, but part of that tertiary prevention, and we need to, as a movement, to be talking about, is employment. We need to make sure that our survivors, that they have a trajectory to thrive. What does that look like? That means that they have a sustainable job. That means that they have education to be able to not only thrive, but maybe get someplace in life that they hadn't chosen in the beginning. So employment is another area. So education, employment, and the last, Ryan, is engagement. This is where we all come in, right? This is where we say, how do we mobilize ourselves to actually make a difference in this eradication of human trafficking? So that can be done by standing up, talking to superintendents and administrators in the schools. It could be talking to juvenile justice about training and making sure it's trauma-informed. It could be standing on the legislative side and letting your members of Congress know where you stand on different legislation. But we need to engage in order to truly eradicate this crime. Okay. So as you look, just for a snapshot before I go deeper into the education space, this is what, over the last 14 years, where I'm so humbled to be able to think about where we were and that story that first launched 3Strands. Now, as you'll see today as I share, has many programs and 41 staff that work across the United States, really focused in on prevention. Okay. So Virginia asked me to go over a little bit of the policy, and I think this is really important. And I know as a Rotarian, political pieces is not necessarily where we dabble, but I think when it comes to human trafficking, which is a completely bipartisan issue, and I love to be able to say that when I'm in Washington, but I think it's important here in the state of Washington to talk about what are the trends that really set the course for us when we talk about prevention. So in 2017, 3Strands Global Foundation wrote the very first legislation nationally that mandated prevention education in schools. It became law in 2018. Governor Brown signed that. And that really set the stage for what should prevention look like, and also how often should it happen. Now, I'm proud to say that that first legislation in California that we have shared with multiple states is now in 13 different states across the nation. And we have federal legislation that specifically, through the Trafficking in Persons Reauthorization Act, covers us in the prevention education space. The next piece down below that sets trends, this is actually the Washington, yeah, thanks, Ryan. The second one is safe online practice. And the reason I included this is that right now, as Virginia shared, that human trafficking is both forced labor and commercial sexual exploitation. And what we have seen in and across the United States and even globally is a spike in what we call CSAM, child sexual abuse material. In 2002, there were 417 reports to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 417 reports. Last year, there were 32 million child sexual abuse material reports in the United States. So for us, it's really important as we zero in on sort of how do we, as the engaged individuals, really talk to our members of Congress to say our children are at risk, prevention's important, we need we need bills and laws to be had where tech companies are held responsible for some of the things that are on social media. That's a part of the prevention. Next slide, please. And then this actually is that law that Virginia mentioned. It's 5355. And I actually just took the sort of the main components of this bill so you all could see that here in Washington now, this has to be actually implemented by 25-26, but it can be implemented right now, which is what we're hoping will start with this PROTECT program. But at least one time, a student must be educated between middle school and high school. It's a great first step. I'm hoping there'll be amendments that'll increase that so students can actually have education even more. But you'll see below in that third paragraph, and I'm not a big reader of slides because I know people can read them, but this is important, the instructional component and best practices. You as a state and we in Washington, as we stand here and sit here today, we know that these things have to actually happen in order for a curriculum or training to go into the schools, which is good because that's best practice. Okay, go ahead. So let's dive into education and what this actually looks like. Next slide. So the PROTECT program, very much like all of our programs at 3Strands Global Foundation, we share with each other across all of them what's happening in the world, what are we finding out that's happening in juvenile justice, what are we finding out that's happening with our foster youth, what are we finding out that's happening with our survivors. All of those programs then help to actually influence our prevention education in the schools. Next slide. So we came up in 2010 with a 9th grade curriculum that now has become a five curricula that is offered in a 4-pronged approach. There's a protocol, there's training, there's education, which is our curriculum, and then there's research. Everything we do at 3Strands has that research component. The other piece that's really important as we talk about true prevention is the protocol piece. Next slide, please. If we look at a protocol and we want to reach 1 million kids, which actually by December, our goal at 3Strands is to get to 1 million children, which we're going to be really close. And we want to reach more than, 500,000. We've got lots of kids across the United States. We have to say to ourselves and ask, what does true prevention look like? It means we have a net underneath our students. And why do we have a net? That means that every teacher who's trained understands their role. Every counselor who may be teaching in the classroom understands their role. We could go in as a nonprofit and we could teach in schools, but we choose not to because a teacher and a counselor every single day sit in that classroom and they interact with those kids. So we want to make sure that they understand the protocol. They know what to do. They know those steps so that they can get the resources to that child as soon as possible. Next slide. Go ahead, next one. So this is actually an example of that protocol. It's just a straw man. So obviously we've written thousands of protocols across the United States, but you can see that when a student may be informed and educated, that student then tells a trusted adult, which may be the teacher or counselor in this place, and then they can get resources that they need. All the while making sure there are outcomes and that net is underneath that student. I'll share with you just briefly, because I think it's important, a story about a 14-year-old little boy who was in his health class. He went through the Protect curriculum, and as he was going through the Protect curriculum with his whole student, his class in health, his teacher talked about online exploitation. And in his mind, and we only know this because we connected with him afterwards, he was thinking, wait, I have a relationship with someone. I'm not so sure that's a trusted adult. I don't know if that's actually who they say they are. And he started to do some of the role play with the teacher, which are some of the activities we have in the Protect program. And then when he went to his PE class, that trusted adult, that teacher in PE, was someone he went to and said, I think I need someone to talk to. I think something is not right online, and I have a relationship that I'm not so sure is with another person who says that they're actually 14 years old. And so sure enough, the counselor, the teacher, the PE teacher, all got together, and it was a 50-year-old man who had befriended that young boy online. But in that curriculum, in that classroom that day, we had the opportunity to truly prevent any further exploitation of that little boy because the health teacher and the counselor and the teacher knew exactly what to do from a protocol perspective. Next slide, please. The other piece that we have at 3Strands, we are super flexible on how we train. So we have a trainer of trainers where we teach our teachers and our counselors really in depth so that they can go and teach these young people in the classroom. But we also have a wide sweeping online platform that we use that platform so that the entire campus can be trained. So not only the yard duty staff and the lunch staff, as well as the teachers and counselors, the administrators and superintendents, all can go through what we call HT 101 to 103. So everybody in that community sense is educated, and then the trainer of trainer actually can be the person who's teaching in the classroom. Okay. This is an example of our online system. It's all scenario-based learning. We've been very fortunate to receive 6 federal grants from the Office of Trafficking in Persons at Health and Human Services. And so we have really its best of class, and a lot of our online training had to not only be vetted, but also had to have scenarios so that people could actually go through role play even online. Okay, next slide, Ryan. The other piece that is important about this curriculum called Protect is that really equity inclusion, right? So having received the 6 federal grants that we've received is not only humbling, but it also brings us to this standard that we have to be able to do things in a way so that across the nation, that it would be acceptable for all standards, not only federal standards from an education perspective, but also standards from a diversity and inclusion perspective. Next slide. And then part of, as I shared earlier, our sharing information across all of our programs, we have consultative status with the UN. That also gives us the opportunity to understand globally what's happening around trafficking, whether it's commercial sexual exploitation or it's forced labor. And then we can take that information and we can infuse it into our training and our curriculum, which allows our students, no matter where they are in the United States, to be empowered citizens as they grow up and they get into the high school years, to actually do something to combat trafficking as they grow older and choose the careers that they may have after high school. Okay, next slide. So this, actually, Virginia asked me if I would go a little bit deep into each of the curricula, and I love this. I'm a daughter of many educators, and I've got aunts and uncles. My own mom was an educator for almost 40 years. So as I interact with our education specialists and our education managers, I love to hear how they have woven this thematic design through our curriculum. So really, we start in kindergarten. People are like, you start in kindergarten? What do you talk about in kindergarten? It's age appropriate. Everything is. We start when they're 5 and 6 years old, and it's about the inner voice. And that inner voice weaves through all the way to the end of 12th grade. Obviously, it's a little more on the age of 18 when they get to high school. But when they're in kindergarten, we actually say, what is that inner voice? We've done all sorts of focus groups with our students over the years so that we know, and from our survivors, that those survivors have said, you know, there was something inside. I couldn't just identify it, but something inside was sort of that inner watchdog for me, and I didn't know what it was. And so we call it the inner voice. When they are done in kindergarten to 3rd grade, then we get to safe people and safe choices and safe places. This is really, what are the characteristics of a trusted adult? The example that I gave of the 14-year-old boy, that was because in that curriculum, it continues to build on what are those characteristics of trusted adult from an age-appropriate way. Who are the friends that you're choosing? What type of friends do you hang out with? And what are those, and how are their lives actually progressing? 7th grade is when we introduce human trafficking, and this is actually standard across the United States. And we talk about the protecting a masterpiece, which I love. And they do all sorts of activities around a masterpiece because value and worth is important, and that they feel valuable and they feel worthy. And then high school is about really launching them out as they get closer to graduating, so they understand the nuts and bolts of human trafficking and how they can be a citizen, a global citizen out in the world to eradicate this. Okay, Ryan, next one. This is where we are across the United States. So you can see that most of our work is in Texas and Utah and California, but soon to be the state of Washington, I know. But this is a real humbling slide as I look at it. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. This is just what we measure, right? We measure everything we do from the teal to the post to the gold, making sure that people understand that we want to see the outcomes going up when we look at all of our data. We measure the staff, right? So if nearly half of the child trafficking cases in the United States, we know that a family member could be involved. And so we want children to understand that. We also want teachers to understand, but beyond the requirement of mandated reporting, what is their role? Next slide. And then we measure too, our high school students, our middle school students, and our elementary school students. What is it that they're learning? What is it they understand? The other piece that is really very innovative is that we've taken our qualitative data, all the stories, there are 37,000 of them. We used natural language processing and AI to actually, go ahead and go to the next slide, measure behavior change. Again, 3Strands is all about how are we actually having an impact? Well, the impact is on the behavior change that happens with the program. Are teachers and counselors actually changing their behavior so that our students are in a good place? Next space. And then after they have all that training, there's parent and caregiver training as well to be that wraparound education in a community for our youth. And then this is just a quick snippet. It'll be about 30 seconds. At 3Strands Global Foundation, the thing that we focus on is hope, and prevention is hope.
This PROTECT program is so needed. When we were doing the curriculum, one of the students indicated that someone was trying to engage with her online. This person had asked her questions about where she lived and how old she was. We got that shut down, very, 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 very quickly because we just made the right intervention at the right time.
Give hope today at 3sgf.org/hope.
Thanks, Ryan. Just have a few slides left. That's the one thing with Canva. When you exit out, you got to enter back in. Okay, So I think for today, these last 3 slides, and then we'll open up for Q&A, because I've got, I'm sure there's some questions that you have for me. But I think for as we look at how do we implement this in Washington, we actually have implemented in the Tri-Cities area, the Protect curriculum, which is a super exciting launch. We want to do this here. Virginia and team have been phenomenal at really trying to not only raise money, but also get the awareness out so that we can do this as Rotarians. I really look at it as our responsibility, right, to protect our kids. So these are just some things that you can do. You can report. That's the National Trafficking Hotline. You can take a picture of that if you'd like to. They always want for us to know how to report human trafficking if we see it. You can volunteer. You can donate. And then the last piece is that advocacy component, which I think is always important. Next slide, Ryan. And then this actually takes you to our website. If you want to use that, you can with the QR code. Our marketing person would always, she puts this in there, she throws it in all the time, but it helps us get to this website so that you can actually see all the things that we do, including the Protect program. Okay, and the last slide, Ryan. Thank you. And then this is how you can stay connected to us. Obviously, all the different ways. We would love for you to get online and join our newsletter so that you can get our email blasts and find out more about what we're doing here in Washington. But again, I am so incredibly honored to be here today. Thank you so much for welcoming me, and it's been nice.
Ashlie.
Yeah.
Ashlie, thank you so much. Ken Calling is going to be taking questions from the audience here, and I will grab the questions from the Zoom. We have a couple of questions from Dorothy and Anna Liotta that I'm going to put into one. Are there any schools that this is currently operating in Seattle, and even though it's not mandated until 25, 26, and what do you need to get that pushed out more? Underwriting, introductions?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So not here in Seattle. In the Tri-Cities we do, but not here. So that's why part of me coming here today and Virginia's gracious invitation for this weekend is so that we can get it here, right? That we can have Protect here in Seattle. I would say that the answer to the second question is yes, we need to raise money because that's part of actually getting the program and scaling it. The beautiful thing about Protect is that once we get things started, remember our vision is to have trainer of trainers, which means that sustainably, that the people on the ground, the teachers and counselors, they're the ones into the future, actually then making the program sustainable. And then there's just a licensing fee that comes to 3Strands for the Protect program, which makes the cost go down over time, unless there's consulting hours. So those are the types of things that we'll raise money for here. Virginia and I, we're like on it. We're going to make it so it happens. And we want all of your help to be able to make it so we can sustainably make this here in Seattle.
Do you have data on I noticed where your programs are and the concentrations in California, Texas, a little bit on the West Coast, very little in the Northeast. What kind of data do you have regarding the incidence of trafficking? Is it concentrated are there populations? I mean, are there some places that are more affected than others? Do you have any data on that?
Yeah, so the National Trafficking Hotline is the data that we pull from. They began in 2008. And the hard part of data, and so for human trafficking, it's a bit elusive. And here's the reason why. We talk about that this is a crime that hides in plain sight. So that little young person, 14-year-old in the classroom, if that curriculum hadn't happened in that classroom, he was being groomed to be a victim of human trafficking. But he may not know until he's in his 20s that he actually was a victim of human trafficking. So we talk about numbers. There was a study in Texas in 2016 that 370,000+ victims of human trafficking were in the state of Texas alone. And so if we look at that study, it was from the University of Texas in Austin, and we extrapolate out to sort of California, Washington, New York, right? We know that there's a lot of victims that are probably across our nation. and even the human trafficking hotline is in the tens of thousands every year of where the calls that they get versus the hundreds of thousands. So I like to say, because it's a crime that hides in plain sight, it's real. That's why prevention is even more important, right? So we get on the front end. I know for our survivor program that we have right now on our caseload in Sacramento, we have 157 survivors that we are placing into sustainable jobs on our caseload, just right now. Over the last 7 years, we've served 900 survivors in that program, just in Sacramento. So we know, and half of those we know have never been able to say that they were a victim until they actually were in a program to say, oh my gosh, that happened to me. So the other part of your question, which I think is really important, is this happens in every zip code. It doesn't happen just in our cities. It happens in rural communities. My story, the reason that this all began was because I was in a sleepy suburb of Sacramento, 35 minutes from the city itself, in a rural community. So it can happen anywhere, and that's a really important thing for us to be able to be aware of too.
I've got what I think is a quick question, and we don't
Yeah.
have a ton of time.
Yeah.
A follow-up to the first question and answer is, what is the investment per school?
That is a great question. So and it's a tricky one because we have the online platform, which we pass through that cost. It's $10 a year for whoever goes through it, right? So that's sort of that flat fee. And then we have a licensing fee, and then we have a research fee. So when we look at each school, there's a different number of students than teachers per school. So for example, Atlanta International School, which is a private school in Georgia, they implemented Protect, and they only have about 600 students, and they have, I think, 60 or so teachers. It was about $1,300. But then we have Sirocco ISD, which is in Texas, which has thousands of students and almost 1,000 teachers, and that was $25,000, right? So it depends on the students and the teachers, and it depends on how many we're trying to reach. It is an economies of scale, so we can, with some pieces of it, actually, have a bunch of people who are taught in person or online, who are a trainer of trainers. That reduces some of our costs, but it depends on the school size, and it depends on how many we're actually reaching to get the exact number.
Thank you again for being here with us today. Just a final quick question following up on this data issue, and I appreciate your focus on that from a how do we know how we're doing perspective.
Yeah.
Is there a second level of demographics or anything else? What I'm taking away from our conversation today is that this is pervasive everywhere, just like the internet itself. So is there any other secondary information like, percentage of immigration or recent immigrants in the area that affects the likelihood of a higher propensity for this problem? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll actually lean into our own data of our survivors because that actually is super helpful. So 79% are who are survivors who actually come forward and say, I've been a victim of human trafficking, are in our program between the ages of 18 and 24. Of the 79%, 90% actually were exploited at the age of 7. That's a powerful statistic, right? Over 89% have a developmental disability. Over 85% come from the foster care system, right? So when I shared the story of my friend's daughter, she has a developmental delay. He picked up on that. Right? That was the vulnerability that he zeroed in on. So important, like Virginia shared in the beginning of that, talking to a youth, for us to help youth understand they are so incredibly valuable and worthy, and that we want this prevention to come at a time when they're young and go all the way through till they're older, so that we increase their protective factors, their resilience, all the things that we're measuring for, so that someone who's 18 to 24 years old, who's a survivor, doesn't look back and say, gosh, I wish that when I was 7 or 6 years old, someone had increased my protective factors, right?
Stay here for a second.
Ashlie, is this on? I wanted to add on the cost. Our Rotary Club has a sizable gift to place. So right now we are looking for a school, ideally a superintendent that is ready to say yes, and we have a gift to place. Secondly, all of you who feel like you helped get this Rotary Club off the ground, supported our projects in the past, gave me ode of encouragement along the way, please come up for a photo op. You know who you are, even if you did a little bit. I'd love to have you in the photo today. Thank you.
So, Ashlie, thank you for just helping educate us a lot on human trafficking and the incredible importance of education and prevention. And in honor of your talk to us, we have made a donation of 600 portions of nutrient-dense food. The gift is to Harvest Against Hunger, and they do such great work, and we're just grateful for what you did for us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I almost got her phone. We're grateful to our club sponsors, Joel Farrell and Bloodworks Northwest. Thank you, Joel. Good, you're up there. And we have a chance to have a little message from Paul Sy about an upcoming Business Mentors event.
Hi, the Business Mentor Committee is kicking off its Business Mentor project, our annual project. Can you put the slide? So we're recruiting business mentors. Give you 3 reasons to become business mentor. 1, you mentor student teams, you train our future business leaders, and you immediately make an impact to our small business community. 2, you get to observe another small business, how they operate, and also maybe learn about a new industry. 3, you connect with fellow Rotarians, other professionals in our community, and the staff and professors at UW. And it fits our 4-way test like a glove. Next slide. So these are some important dates. Commitments only 4 months. A lot of the meetings are and can be virtual. So please talk to me or Barton DeLacy, co-chairs of the Business Mentor Committee, and sign up today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul and Barton, for the great work you do. And we are actually going to go to the Foster School in February to meet with a lot of those students that have been mentored, and it'll be a chance for Rotary to really see the benefit of what this committee does. So that's wonderful. So we have a couple upcoming events to get on your calendar. Next Tuesday, October 10th, we will have an evening event from 5:30 to 7. It's going to be at the Renaissance Hotel, which is 6th and Madison. It's going to be a spotlight on service and learn from the people within our club that are part of our service committees and hear about some of the work that they're doing and some opportunities that we have for service. This event does not cost any money to attend, and there will be some appetizers and a cash bar. And there will be very discounted parking there too. The hotel manager is a Rotarian, so he's excited to have us there and do a favor to make our evening special. There'll be more on the newsletter for that. And as you know, our new cadence will, with the emphasis on service, we'll try to be highlighting more service opportunities. And we have 2 to point out that are really exciting. The first one is hearing about the great service that Rotary has done through its polio eradication program. On Tuesday, October 24th, it is World Polio Day. And those of you who don't know that Rotary was very, 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 very involved in the eradication of polio, and it's down to 3 or 4 hotspots still in the world. And so the Gates Foundation, in recognition of our involvement, wants us to come down to their headquarters down by the Memorial Stadium and celebrate World Polio Day. There's no charge for this event, and it's going to be from 5 to 7, and there will actually be a Zoom feed for those that can't come in person, and that'll be from 5:30 to 6:30. We'll have more information on our site. So exciting to have this celebration and a constant recognition that the fight is not quite over yet in polio eradication. And then on October 25th, Heather Fitzpatrick has done a nice thing to say, if we want to help people understand what service at the Wellspring Family Services, let's have a noontime offering on Wednesday, October 25th. We will have from 12 to 1:30 a chance for people to go down to Wellspring Family Services and volunteer. Heather's here today, and she'll chat with some people afterwards on what sort of things they could do. We'll arrange some carpooling too for those that need help getting there. But that's exciting, and we'll have more information on that. And it's a part of what our 4th week, especially Attention on Service, will be each month. So in closing, the work done for human trafficking now is really similar to the vital work done for abolition more than 200 years ago. Ashlie described for us the perseverance needed, and it reminded me of the efforts of a guy named William Wilberforce. It might be a name you don't know, but Mr. Wilberforce was a British politician and abolitionist whose diligent efforts educating the people in Great Britain and pushing for the abolition of slavery made Great Britain abolish slavery in 1807. This was 58 years before the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution brought about the abolition of slavery here in the United States. So that's a cool guy, right? And he had a neat quote for us. Nancy likes to bring us some quotes, and here's what he had to say. You may choose to look the other way, but you can never say you did not know. And that, boy, when Ashlie talked today, absolutely, that's exactly what it sounds like. Those were powerful. They impacted the citizens and leaders and impacted the U.S. to make eventual abolition of slavery. So we thank you for bringing to light the atrocities of human trafficking, and it's a great reminder that we cannot choose to look the other way. Thank you for being here today. We are adjourned.